I've been asked that question. I've been asked the question about how I got interested in science quite a bit. I think it is just my education system. It's hard to say. I mean, my dad was an engineer and my mother was a high school teacher, and so I think education was very big for both of them. So they did take us to things like the Toronto Science Centre, and they did take us to these Audubon lectures about birds. And I have to say, it did not spark any interest in birds with me, so I don't know. But not everybody gets raised by parents that are as interested in education and studies that way. But I think it's mostly because in school, I did very well in math and science, and I was one of those kids who thought science class was fun. And most people don't, so I don't know why, I just did. I had, in high school, I think I had very good science teachers. There was Mrs. Bowman in grade 9, whose husband was a chemistry professor. And she would spend her summers in her husband's lab learning the latest in chemistry. So I had her for grade 9 science, and she would like to have things exploding in the front of her room. And she was wonderful in a lot of ways. I had her again for grade 12 chemistry. And she brought in chocolate bars for us one test. I had to miss because I was in the high school band and we'd gone to England during the one test. And so she says, before you start, you must have your brain working. And so she gave us each a chocolate bar to get us our brain working. But also I must say, Jim Forsyth was my physics teacher in grade 13. And I was in his homeroom for the entire 5 years of high school. So I sat in the physics room every morning to start the school day. He also is the one who put me on, I've been for 20 years on my high school wall of fame, and it was my high school physics teacher that did that for me. So my mother was raised in a small Canadian farm town, and she was raised on a farm. She had an older brother and an older sister. Now the brother inherited the farm and did not go to university, but the two girls, and this was back in the 1940s, were both sent to university. The oldest one had thought about going into medicine but switched into nursing. And my mother wanted to go into maths and sciences. That's what she was good at. But before her sister went ahead of her, and my mother got advised that as a female she would find going into the sciences very hard and that she would be better served by going into the arts. So my mother listened to these people because coming from a town of 1,000, she just felt overwhelmed about the idea, and so she chose to go then into the arts and then regretted it ever after. So again, I was raised by a very strong woman who made it clear that she wished she had followed her heart and soul and not listened to everybody else. I think Marie Curie is just one of those icons that you hear about, so I can't possibly tell you when I would have first heard of her. Marie Goeppert Meyer, I didn't even know was a woman when I cited her in my thesis. I just knew of, Goeppert Meyer's work. And it is very funny that I actually said he in my thesis. That's how uneducated I am. And one of the people reading, the theorist who had helped me at the end, Joe Eberly, stroked it off and said, "Donna, shame on you." I think since Maria Goeppert Meyer has won that there's many more women in science than when she was there, right? I think the fact that she did not get a paying job as a scientist until I think the 1950s, which is when she did her Nobel Prize-winning work, is amazing, right? So I've been paid all along. I never had a female professor, not as an undergrad, not as a grad student, and now there are 6 of us, I believe, in my department of 40. So that's still only, 15%. It's not as high as it should be, but the fact that there are even 6 women instead of 0 is quite a change. So I think things are changing for women all the time. Certainly I grew up in the 70s, and we were all about women's lib, and I remember being told over and over again, women, you can do anything. So it never entered my mind that I couldn't. I think everybody in the world should be told that do what you love and what you think you're good at. I don't want to really distinguish men from women. I think there are jobs that are stereotypically women jobs, and I don't see any reason that men shouldn't do those. I don't think women are more caring than men, and yet we hear, you know, so many jobs are for women because they're the more nurturing. I think that's just as wrong on the other side. So I think every person should be exposed to every type of field and find out what they're good at, and everybody should get to do what they're good at and what they love to do. No, you know, I feel like I have was born under a lucky star, and just life just worked out for me. And then I will tell other women who ask me this, because the people are always wondering, you know, when should you have your children? And I said, no, you should just do everything when it feels right for you. No, there is no one life plan that works for everybody. And because my husband and I, the first year of marriage, actually lived bi-coastal so that we could both have good jobs, that got old fast. And so I did give up on the academic track, and I took a job as a member of technical staff. And it turns out that it was perfect for me, because I had my 2 children. I went through my 2 pregnancies on that job, and I was someone who was nauseous all 9 months, all day long. And I realized that when I got my first teaching job, which was right after my second child was born, I thought I could not have lectured through those 2 pregnancies. I could not have stood in front of a classroom. I was so ill through all those 2 sets of 9 months. So to me, my life just keeps working out. I thought maybe I was giving up on my career, but I hadn't. And someone, like the University of Waterloo, was willing to hire me after 4 years of being out of the academic track. And so this is what I always tell women, that you have to do what's right for you at the time that's right for you, and hope that life works out. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one born under such a lucky star, but my life seems to keep working out. I think this is the toughest thing about being a female scientist. I think once we become 50-50 women and men, then it won't be quite the same, but almost every female scientist is married to a male scientist. Male scientists can't be married to female scientists. There's not enough of us to go around for them. And so it does bring in the 2-body problem. And most couples have to find jobs together, but many other jobs exist in almost every city, whereas science jobs only come up rarely here, there, and everywhere. So if you want to do the type of science you want to do, you have to be willing to look worldwide. And so it is very hard for 2 scientists to get jobs together. And I must say, my husband followed me to Canada and took a job with industry, and it wouldn't have been his choice either. And so we each took our turn. As he says, he's now been 22 years living in my country, near my family, and with me doing the job I wanted to do. And I only was 4 years in New Jersey, near his family in his country, with him doing the job he wanted to do. So he kind of keeps asking when it's his turn for me to go back and follow him. I think diversity is a good thing, whether you're in science or in anything. Again, it goes along with, not only should every gender be exposed, every person has the right. It shouldn't be a privilege, it is a right to do what you want to do and what you are good at. And I think, and I've said this before, I think the world works best if we all do what we are good at, so that no group of people should ever be discouraged from doing what they are good at. The world works best if we all get our opportunities, and we all do it. So it is unusual that I am winning a Nobel Prize for my very first work. I've called it a one-hit wonder quite a bit of the time when I give talks, and people always want to hear about this one paper rather than my newer work. It's unusual. Most of the time, I think supervisors get the credit for the work. And I also think that Gerard Moreau, my supervisor, deserves more credit maybe for this prize than I do, because it was his idea. As the student, it's my job to take the idea and make it a reality, and so a lot of work goes into that. And people over the years have said that the students should be credited with the fact that though you're given one grand idea, you still have to figure out all the other details to make the idea work. So everybody should be rewarded. I think possibly I'm one of the people that are getting rewarded as a student because It was an individual project. And so there were just the two names on the paper as opposed to a large group of names. And therefore, when it's a large group of names, one person represents that group, and that one person would have to be the supervisor. So. When I went to graduate school, I really went with the attitude that I wanted to do one of the world's best PhDs. Now, I didn't think I was unique in that. I would think every student going for a PhD must hope to do one of the world's great PhDs. I don't think anybody goes to do a PhD for society to say, great job. I think there's many other jobs where your parents are telling you, be a doctor, be a lawyer. There are things, at least in North American culture, which are held up on a pedestal, and science isn't one of them. I think you go in and do a PhD in science because you just love it and want to do it. And if that's why you're doing it, you must want to do the best. So there was that. There was Gerard's group, was just a group of fabulous students, and we were all there trying to do the best. So I think we all urged each other on, we all helped each other, but there was also that competitive spirit in all of us, and we all knew the other one was working hard, so we must work hard. But as well, when anybody struggled, we all figured out a way around each person's struggle so that they could keep moving forward. So it was, even though I'm the only one getting credited, it was quite a team effort. I think that science is a team sport. I think that you have to talk to somebody else about it. It helps you form your ideas, and it also will spark something, especially if you're at a dead end trying to figure it out. There has to always be this conversation back and forth, whether it's from student to supervisor, student to student, to anybody, yes, from scientist to scientist. It just helps to talk about what you're doing. Of course, it's fun to have. I particularly like having students in my group and talking to them and trying to get them to see it from their own perspective and get them to the point where they're telling me the new things and that I can learn from them. That's always the goal of every supervisor, is to bring your student to the point where they're letting you know what I should already know. And so that's the joy in it. No, I don't think I have one piece of advice that to give to a student. I think each of us is unique, and each of us sees it from a different point of view. And so, what one person needs, another person doesn't need. I will tell you though that quite a long time ago, before I even came to Waterloo, there was a student who was to give a talk, and a female student to give a talk. And this female student was particularly nervous. And I pointed out that I said, this is one of the challenges that I think women have to overcome, is that boys at the time certainly were raised to have bravado. Boys are raised to say, look what I did. Boys, whether it's through sports or anything, they are to stand up and almost be beating themselves on the chest saying, look how good. Women are raised to stay quiet and demure, and women are raised to not show off. And I was given this advice early on as well. I said, no, you must learn that to get your PhD, you must be able to stand up and give a talk. And if you're giving a talk about your research, you are basically saying, look at me, this is what I did. Now, you don't say it in those words, but this is why it is harder quite often for the females to get up and give effective talks, because they want to always be so humble about it, and they have to get over that. So I personally think that since you spend so many hours a day at work, you should, if you have the chance. Unfortunately, a lot of people have to work just for a paycheck, but scientists do not. Scientists are doing it. They could do something else that would make them more money. So I think if you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to be doing it. That's all I think. And so you can call it fun, or you could just call it excitement, or you can call it enjoyable. I call it fun. For me, the fun of science is that even though there's a lot of hard work to get an experiment to happen, and that you can spend, so the one that I'm being awarded for took a year of work to get done. But there is something so exciting about data being shown on a screen, or a laser that you've been trying to struggle to make work finally works and you see it. And laser physics is one that you actually see happening. There's all kinds of things when you see one color of light change to another color of light, or what have you, that's exciting to see. And brand new data that you know you have and other people don't have is just such an exciting feeling. So that's why I just think it's fun. And I like building. I've said before, Lego was one of my favorite toys growing up. And so building lasers falls under that category of feeling like a toy and that you're just simply playing with a new thing. Well, there's only one commercial application of this laser yet, and that is cutting or machining of transparent material. So it can be glass used on a cell phone, it can be the cornea of your eye. That's the one application. I was actually quite surprised that that started just 10 years after the laser was built. It usually takes quite a bit longer from a research tool in a lab to become an actual product. So I'm surprised by that. But I think going forward, the exciting one will be if we can actually get laser acceleration to work. There's a number of people working on laser acceleration. I myself am not at this point, but I think if we can start to either compete with the hospital accelerators so that it can be used for medicine, or even the large CERN, that would be the exciting one, I think. No, I don't feel that the work you do should be directly applicable to society. Again, it falls under my idea that we should all do what we're good at. And I don't think every one of us is good at taking an idea out to there or knowing what society should do. But again, it goes back to the fact that scientists have to constantly have dialogues. And so it's a whole train of people. And it doesn't matter if it's something to be used for society or just an application for whatever. It's a non-stop continuum of people working together. So hopefully there's other people that are looking at this who want to help society and work back to find the right things. I think it's a shock. It's a stunning shock to be woken up to be told that you are a Nobel Prize winner. Again, this work was done over 30 years ago. So it's not something that I'm living and breathing every day, that I did trip pulse amplification for my PhD all those years ago. So no one's expecting in my position to win a Nobel Prize. So you get woken up at 5 in the morning. My husband is closer to our landline phone that is in our bedroom. And so he answered the phone, and certainly in the middle of the night when you get woken up, it's usually a fear thing that someone has been hurt. And so I'm saying, what is it, what is it, what is it? And Doug goes, they're asking for Professor Strickland. So then you kind of know that then no time am I called Professor Strickland, even usually at the university. So, and then you get this, it's an important call from Sweden. And then you're put on hold, although actually they hung up on me. But I thought I was on hold, and I'm hanging on to Doug going, it's from Sweden and it's October 2nd, and I think I've won the Nobel Prize. So it's like, and usually they're going, this can't really be true. So that's all it feels like, this can't be true. So many things. My daughter, I texted 4 people before the press conference and after I'd received the call. I texted my brother and my sister, my son and my daughter. I knew that my brother and sister would get it right away. My sister was in Europe, so it would be the daytime, and my brother wakes up. I knew my 2 kids would not get it right away. And the funniest one was my daughter, who unfortunately had her email hacked in the summer before this. And so when she got the text saying, all it said is, I won the Nobel Prize. She goes, oh, Mom's phone has been hacked. And even her girlfriend called her and said, congratulations on the Nobel Prize. And she goes, no, my mother's phone has been hacked. And she had to be told, oh, it's in the news. So then she Googled, and she was in tears screaming at me in the phone call. So that was exciting. I think at my press conference at the university the first day, my entire department showed up. And the former chair of the department, who I was associate chair under, stood up to congratulate me on behalf of all of them. And he almost had me in tears, because they were just, that's when I really looked. I think I was a deer caught in headlights with so many cameras on me. I'd never faced such a thing before. And when I looked at each face there, and they were just all beaming at me, it was almost too much. My life got turned upside down with winning the Nobel Prize. I now realize, I don't think at the time I realized how reclusive I was and how much I enjoy spending time all by myself, until I found out that that was not something possible after winning the Nobel Prize, and that all of a sudden people want my autograph, or people want to take selfies with me, or, you know, like I said, everybody in my department. Now when they see me, a big smile comes on their face, and yet it's like, really, because you've known me for so many years. So things are very different for me. I kind of hope they go back to just a normal way. I don't think people can live on this heightened excitement for very long, but it's been quite different for the last 2 months. Well, for a scientist needs first curiosity. They need to be excited about trying to learn something different. They have to be able to communicate well to be a good scientist, because you do have to talk back and forth so that you get these new ideas. I think an experimental physicist needs incredible patience. And so some students try it for a while and realize they simply don't have the patience to do that kind of work. And then, of course, things break and you have to start again. And it can lead to a lot of frustration. So you have to have that kind of patience. But again, if it's work you enjoy, it's not as hard as it is, although frustration is still hard to deal with. I'm somebody who knows what I'm trying to get to at the end of my project, and so it doesn't matter how many hurdles get thrown in. As soon as it's another hurdle, one must figure a way around it. But that is the job of a scientist. Usually the hurdles are a technical challenge or a scientific obstacle that you weren't expecting, but then that's what science is about. If you already knew how everything worked, you wouldn't have to do the project to start with. So each one is a new puzzle, and you have to me, I just think of it as a puzzle rather than a problem. But then I also like to work on projects that not very many people are working on, rather than being part of the race. So this is why I have not worked on chirp pulse amplification as much. I have two systems in my lab, but I look for projects that I find really fun to do, but the whole rest of the world aren't necessarily doing them. So I don't ever feel like I'm in a time race. In 30 seconds might be very hard. This is a way to make sure that you can have very intense pulses. And the idea is, like, I call it a laser hammer, in that if you can push on a nail with all your might, it won't go into a piece of wood. But if you hit it with a hammer quickly, it goes in. And this is the idea, is that we can make our laser pulses both energetic and short. But we didn't have the hammer inside the laser destroying the laser, which is why it never worked before. But we could do it in a way that the laser was fine, and then make the pulse short after amplification so that it could be like a laser hammer.